Hi, I'm Louise from OTGrow, and welcome to our next episode. So I've had a lot of requests around evidence-based practice with the interactive group model. Where is the research? Where is the proof? Where is the literature? And so today I am thrilled to invite Annelie Meyer to our episode, and we're going to unpack a little bit her master's degree, where she focused on groups in an acute setting. But I don't want to run ahead, so we're going to just welcome Annelie. She also published the article to tell us a little bit more about it. Welcome, Annelie.
Hi, Louise. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, like you said, I'm very thrilled that we finally published the article. You know how that process can be dragged out. So yeah, feeling very fortunate to sit on this side of the article today.
Yeah, and congratulations and well done. I know it's a lot of perseverance needed. But I also want to add that you shared it at the Share conference, our previous Share conference, before it was in an article format. So I'm thrilled that it actually came to the point of being published. So yes, congratulations.
We won't mention the time lapse in between though.
It's there. It's there. All right. So
Yeah, and I also,
tell me a little bit of the title. What's the title of the research published?
okay, so it's the therapeutic impact of occupational therapy groups on inpatients with major depressive disorder or mental health care users with major depressive disorder.
Okay. Okay. All right. So maybe just to explain just a little bit about the research and how it was structured and what you were looking for.
So we did it at an acute inpatient setting in a private hospital. And the patients were admitted as they would usual. We didn't really manipulate the context. So it was just the normal running of the hospital. And then we did a pre and a post test. I don't know if you're familiar with the APOM. We used the APOM as the tool. And so when they were admitted, we did the pre-test, and then they participated in the occupational therapy program. At this particular setting, the patients, with the help of an OT, would choose the groups that they thought they would most benefit from. And then after participation in the program, we did a post-test also with the APOM. And then we tracked the change and analyzed the data according to the types of groups they attended, etc.
Okay, so let's unpack a little bit now that we understand how the testing worked. So it was the APOM pre and post, and what did you find?
Yeah, so I'm very excited to share one of the things that surprised me the most was that it seemed like in this particular study, the length of stay was not as clinically or statistically rather significant as the number of groups that they attended when we looked at the change in the APOM scores. So yeah, I think that was quite a surprise to me, especially comparing it to previous studies. So especially in the light of thinking of medical aids and funding, we can with confidence say that the more groups people do, the better they did in this particular study when we looked at their improvement in APOM scores.
Sure. So I want to reiterate that because I think it's important for people to hear that. So it's not about how long people stayed, but more the shift came in their APOM in terms of how many OT groups they attended. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct. But I also just need to mention here that the population that of my study, the 61 participants who in the end made it into the pre and post test, they were on passive participation. And I think this is an important factor to account for, because if you think of a chronic hospital, maybe length of stay is more important when people are on self-diff or self-pres, where it really takes a longer time maybe for those acute symptoms to be treated. But for this particular population, it seemed to actually not have a statistical impact on their APOM scores.
So that excites me too, because we, especially with the interactive group model, we keep saying, make sure you have passive participation clients, because anything below is not going to really get therapeutic benefit as much as a von Toy approach to the lower levels. But so that all the more that it kind of really falls into that of, if you take somebody from passive participation and higher, then it becomes clinically significant, the more groups that they attend in their stay.
Yeah. Yeah, and now that you mentioned the interactive group work model, that was also something that we considered during this research, because the context where we did this research, they used the interactive group work model in most of their groups. So there were different group categories that were studied or analyzed, and the interpersonal group category, that was one of the categories, actually had the most significant correlations with the change in APOM scores from the admission to discharge.
Oh, that just gets me so excited. That's wonderful to hear. So although there were many groups and they could choose which ones they wanted to attend, those that ended up attending the interactive group model actually improved the most in their activity participation, is what you're saying.
100%. And it was interesting to also then look at what aspects of the APOM were the most improved. And no surprise that it was communication and interaction was the one domain that improved the most, and motivation.
Oh, wow.
So motivation was one of the ones that was quite, it was really significant. When compared to some of the other domains, the improvement in motivation was there was quite a leap there. And I think if we bring it back to our level of creative ability, this population being on passive participation, and if we think about groups and Yalom and the curative factors, we know that belonging and that installation of hope and cohesion is what they need on passive participation, because they want to belong to a group. They have that external locus of control. They want to be part of something. So that was also quite significant to witness or to find the result.
Yeah, it is so nice that the research shows it. It's not a Louise says or OTGrow says, but the research shows that. So that is really nice. I think what's also for me something that I'm thinking of now is passive participation, being so worried, low self-esteem. I rather not do anything than make a mistake. And it's almost like the group creates this safe space for them to try things and build up their self-esteem in a really safe environment that eventually can be taken back to society, integrating in society.
Yes, and that actually links to one of the other domains that were quite showed quite a significant improvement, which is role performance. And that was interesting to see, because the study overall, role performance, the improvement, that was one of the domains that had the least improvement. But with the interpersonal groups or the interactive groups, that it was in the top 3. And I think it's because I get the opportunity to try on different roles, and I get feedback, and I refine my roles, and those roles that I tend to take on in society, I play out in the group. Like you always say, what I do out there is what I'll do in here.
Exactly.
So that was also quite interesting. And to take it a step further, we also looked at closed versus open groups. So at the setting where we did the research, they had interpersonal groups where it's open for anyone can join it every day, where as opposed to a closed group where it's the same patients or mental health care users for a few consecutive sessions. So you can't join tomorrow if you didn't attend yesterday's group, for instance. And there the motive, when we compared the open and closed group results, it was really interesting to see the difference between the motivation, again, the motivation domain. I think if to bore you a little bit with the statistics, I think in the open group category, the correlation was 0.33, which is a low to moderate correlation, whereas in the closed group, it was 0.46 for communication and interaction, which is a moderate correlation. And the same happened with motivation. It was also significantly higher than the open group domains. So yeah, there we can really see that passive participation. I'm part of a group, but now I start to feel safe because it is the same people every day.
Yeah.
Now I really get to and self-esteem, motivation, all of the domains of the APORM tested higher with the closed groups as opposed to the open groups.
Oh, that really does my heart so good to hear. But I think I mean, now that the evidence is there, Annelie, I mean, do you think that the industry is ready to hear that?
Sure, Louise, this is a good question, because I actually spoke to my colleagues this morning and I told them I'm speaking to Louise today, and I feel like such a hypocrite because I'm going to advocate for closed groups. We battle so much in our own setting to make it work. And I had to take a step back and look at some of the practices where they are able to run closed groups. And I realized that it didn't happen overnight. Some of the therapists I know in Pretoria that are able to do closed groups, it took them literally years and a lot of advocating and a lot of fighting and trial and error and going back to the drawing board. And I said to them this morning, I've been kind of, what is mismoedig in English?
Yeah, I don't no, hopeless. No, is it? No.
Yeah, I was starting to feel a little bit hopeless, like, oh, is it even worth it? But I think when I think about, you know, the bigger picture and I zoom out a little bit, it's like, yes, maybe sometimes it feels like I'm knocking on I need to push this closed door open the whole time, but it's almost like this door is squeaking open. There's like a little bit of movement, and I can see it in our own setting. It's maybe not where we want it, but it's already better than it was a year ago. So I think my advice to people in the industry is to, if it didn't work the first time, don't stop trying. Any progress is progress, because we know that we are in a system. We're part of a multidisciplinary team where there is so many factors to consider. But yeah, I think we should just keep advocating.
Yeah, and I think it helps to have the research backing you. You know, it's one thing to try and advocate for it because you can see or whatever, but now this becomes evidence, an evidence-based practice. I think that the question is also, I mean, we're dealing with very big things. We're dealing with medical aids, we're dealing with the institution itself, we're dealing with, you know, the MDT, who, you know, time and when to see their clients and all of that. So I realize there's a much bigger picture here, but I think it becomes evidence-based practice, and for us not to kind of go, oh, well, you know, it does it really matter? Because now we know it does.
Yes, and I mean, yeah, I think it requires a lot of creativity, because maybe it's not going to work the way I want it to work. I might have to, I know there's some practices that say, okay, fine, you know what, I'm going to stop fighting the system. I'm going to do my closed groups from 4 till 5:30 in the afternoon once everybody else have finished seeing their clients. And it requires sacrifice, because now someone needs to be there at 4 till 5:30, and maybe you need to get a locum, or the therapist must come in later. So I think we need to start thinking outside of the box if we want to make this happen. And I think what happened in the place where I did the research is, once the people started seeing the impact of the closed groups, they started actually referring patients to it. So it's like you just need to get that in, which we are still working hard to get. But yeah, I think then
isn't that so ironic? Yeah, it's so ironic, you know, the very thing that once you manage it, actually people become pro, whereas now you're trying to accommodate everybody and make everybody feel okay. And at the end of the day, nothing is really happening, and there's not really value placed on it, not by clients, not by the MDT. Whereas the minute you start changing that and closing the group, but like you said, being creative, thinking out of the box, all of a sudden everybody starts tangibly feeling and seeing the impact.
Yeah, and it was so funny because eventually we did the research, psychiatrists are the ones insisting you need to do this group, like before you get, or they would move the discharge dates because you haven't finished your closed group yet. And I think sometimes it just means to get that in, to be creative, and then later maybe it might be easier to then promote and get the groups on the program.
So I think it's a message of hope, this, isn't it? To say to people, don't lose hope. This is a process, but once you get to that, and the evidence is for the closed interactive group model. Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Anything else that came out of the study, Annelie?
Well, I think it was interesting to note, just to close off this category that we're speaking about now, is that overall in the research, the affect domain was the one that improved the most from admission to discharge. But interestingly, in the interactive groups, this is the one that had the lowest correlation with improvement in APOM scores. Which can be very deceiving if you think about how people sometimes measure functioning with symptom scales. Now they do research and they use symptom scale, and I think it's Davidson who did also research on the interactive group work model, and one of her key findings was that the patients really enjoyed the shifts that the interactive group work model brought, but it came with discomfort and difficult emotions. So although all the other domains of the APOM were showing this significant improvement, we shouldn't be surprised that affect, because we're stirring the pot. So the groups where affect, for instance, did show a significant improvement was more in the stress management category, where we looked at mindfulness, or the more here and now type of approach, in terms of like you use sensory type of techniques, or drumming, or tension release exercises. Those type of groups spoke to almost your acute symptoms, your client factors like self-esteem, motivation, affect, but maybe not so much the life skills or the role performance or the other things that we also saw improving with the interactive model, if that makes sense.
So actually we're talking about a balanced program where you can have the drumming, and you can have that for the more affects, improvement in affect, but that your interactive group model is basically going to be, according to this research, for this population, one can even say is likely to show the most improvement on most of the things, but not everything.
It still showed improvement of the affect domain, but it wasn't as big as the other domains.
All right.
Yeah. And another thing that was noted for this, and this is important to clarify, it's just for this population, was that the craft group category, the improvement there wasn't really statistically significant.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's if we look at our population, they were on passive participation, and the craft group category for this setting was more self-directed. So I'm sure if my population were on self-praise, or they were on other levels of creative ability, it would have been a different result. And even the types of groups these participants chose, only 5 or more people chose to participate in the craft groups. Most of them wanted to go to the groups where they participate with others and they get the opportunity to connect.
That's also great, because I think there's two things here. I think the one thing is that a lot of people saying, oh, it's uncomfortable for people to be in a group. You know, they rather want to be individuals because and yet they actually chose to be with other people.
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting because I think sometimes people assume that it's too difficult. Clients actually would prefer to just be seen individually. So that's quite amazing for me. I think the other thing is possibly, you know, maybe it's something deeper about the way we present craft groups or the way that they are advocated or explained to clients might also, you know, I don't know if I really want to, I don't think I'm creative, you know, it might be some of the kind of mind chatter, and especially with passive participation, that are afraid of making mistakes and self-esteem.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's norms.
exactly. Norms I've got to comply to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what if I fail?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was also quite interesting. Yeah, so I think overall, this is just a reminder for us that for those of you working in acute psychiatry, that we don't just keep people busy in our groups. It makes an impact on their functioning, and yeah, I think can back ourselves.
Oh, thanks so much, Annelie. I think it's really important, you know, some of the research we get might not all be so favorable for the interactive group model. I'm thrilled to bits this one is, and I'm thrilled to bits the things that we have been training and been saying for so many years, the research is now starting to back it. So I really love that part. But I think it's important, the process of researching and being informed and, you know, just even seeing, but, you know, the clients actually preferred the groups and not necessarily crafts. I think that all helps us to take a step back and say, okay, well, what are we doing? And how does that inform the practice and the programs that we set up in yours as a private psychiatric clinic, hey?
Yeah, and just to mention again, I think I did mention it in the title, but this population was clients with major depressive disorder. And if we also look at just the other demographic information, they were quite there was high levels of education in this particular population. Most people had a post-matric for this particular population. So I think there's a lot of things to also just keep in mind. And I think that's the type of population a lot of people actually work with in the private sector. So I think, yeah, to keep that in the back of your mind if you use this research to plan your own program as well.
Thanks so much, Annelie. So I think we're going to call it a day here. But again, just to encourage everybody out there, if you are considering doing your considering doing not even so big, but just a research, I love that it's quite simplistic, APOM pre and post, and just having a look at what you're finding and to share that with the OT community. Any last words from your side, Annelie?
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and a shout out to my supervisors, Dalian Castellane and Ulinda Siluale, who really supported me through the process. Yeah, thank you, Louise.
Pleasure. All right, keep well, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye.